Court Vision is back in session.
Welcome to Court Vision from New Roads Media.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I forgot the name of our show.
You're not doing us any favors, man.
Look, man, it's okay. We don't record often enough anymore for me to remember as easily. Thank you all so much for joining us today. You got Kilroy, Mongo, Tommy, maybe Kevin at some point. Depends on how his flight works. So we shall see how that goes. I would imagine he isn't joining us. So we are today's episode recapping the NBA Conference Finals between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder and the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers. We will also go over our finals prediction for who we believe will be the NBA champion at the end of this potentially seven game series. And then we will give our takes on the losers, who I'm not going to spoil you, but spoiler, it wasn't the Knicks who won, and it wasn't the Timberwolves. And we'll give you our thoughts on what those two teams should do moving forward. So let's kick this off with the Knicks and the Pacers, because I want to get this out of them. I just want to get this done with. Knicks lose in 6 games to the Pacers. I'm not trying to knock the Pacers. The Pacers are obviously a very good team. They made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They beat the Knicks last year. They're clearly a good team. They were only 1 game back of the Knicks for the number 3 seed, and they may or may not have intentionally gone for the lower seed so that they didn't have to face Boston potentially in the second round. This is all, hypotheticals. But the Pacers were going to give the Knicks a hard time. That team is just built to give teams hard times, and they're built to give the Knicks specifically, who are a team that is prone to injuries, a hard time. And oddly enough, the Knicks weren't as badly hurt this year, but for the most part, they were healthy, other than when Cat got his knee banged up in game, what was that, 3 or 4 or whatever that was, 4 or 5, something like that. Game 4, I think it was. So outside of that, the Knicks were a pretty healthy team. It's just their reluctance to adjust until it was necessary. Game 1 and 2 were really in the Knicks' hands, and then they kind of the Knicks really easily could have won the series if they just executed a little bit differently in games 1 and 2. But again, not to take away from Pacers. Pacers made huge comebacks. They were down 20, I think, in both, or close to 20 in both of those games. Hats off to them. They did what they needed to do. Don't tell Kevin. He'll be very upset. But yeah, hats off to the Pacers. The Knicks did not do themselves any favors. I did not watch the last game. I was unfortunately busy, but I did hear the officiating was wonderful, as always, as NBA officiating is. But it is what it is. Is it disappointing? Of course it's disappointing. But as a Knicks fan, it's not disappointing, because they've disappointed me much, much more over the past 35 years of my life.
See, here's the thing. You can't be disappointed here. Here's the only thing I'm disappointed about. I thought for sure this thing was going 7. So being the meathead I am, already, this was supposed to be night 7 tonight. It's June 3rd. I had already gone out and bought my snacks, and now I'm stuck here eating an entire freaking meat platter while we do this show. And so I'm going to take some cheese. I'm going to take some pepperoni. I'm going to eat my medicine like a big boy here, but there's no reason to be disappointed. There's no reason to be disappointed. First of all, game 1, if no one is talking about how statistically impossible some of those Nembhard threes were. If you play that game shot for shot, everyone does exactly the same thing again 100 times. The Knicks are winning 99 of those 100. There's no reason this thing doesn't go into game 6, instead 3-2 Knicks, and we're still playing a game 7. I'm not eating this cheese alone. Now I'm stuck watching. I'm watching the Reds Brewers game while this is going on. That's what I have to eat a meat platter with. Anyway, I digress. The point is,
like some good antipasto.
They're it's very nice, little cheese cracker action. If anyone's interested, I invited you guys over. I streamed Brady Singer in my fantasy league. I took the Reds money line. I wanted you guys to watch Reds Brewers tonight with me. Tommy, you don't check your work email apparently, but I invited you. You were welcome. But listen, we'll talk more about it when we get to what should the Knicks do. But I gotta say this. 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks exactly from today, is supposed to be Game 5 of the championship. We're going to be back here in 2 weeks talking about the Thunder sweep. And I'm not going to lie. I'll say it again in 2 weeks. I'd rather be the Knicks than the Pacers right now. The Pacers are just waiting for their turn to get exposed, right? With no evil empire in the league right now, with no true face of the league, recency bias is running rampant amongst the media. So each star is just getting their turn as we get exposed. So yeah, we have to sit here and talk about how Brunson couldn't keep up with Halliburton and how Towns, got pushed around at times, and how, Towns' decision-making, this, that, and the other. But it's just our turn. And the bottom line is, it really 99 out of 100 times, it would be 3-3 right now. I actually, the one time I actually did get angry during this series was when Tibbs finally made those adjustments in Game 3, because they've been a ±9 since January. They know this team has its faults, and they haven't cared yet. You're going to change it now? But what ended up happening was they found out that Mitchell Robinson is back, baby. Mitchell Robinson is a huge piece going into next year. They found out, you said you didn't watch the last game, Kilroy, but they found out DeLon Wright can control the pace of he's a true veteran point guard now. You got to re-sign that dude, because when that game was starting to get out of hand in the first, DeLon Wright slowed things down to a point where it was almost painful to watch. It was a crawl, but that's what you need if you're going to beat a team like the Pacers or the Cavs or some of these younger teams. So I think they found a lot of good pieces moving forward. We'll talk more. You said we'll talk about it as the last part of the show, but I'm not mad here. They got beat. The shots went the Pacers' way. A couple nice calls went the Pacers' way. Halliburton's shot bounced 93 times and fell into force overtime in Game 1. But you can't be disappointed. Hats off to the Pacers, like you said. But really could have gone either way series the whole way.
Now, let me clarify. When I mean disappointed, I mean like disappointed, like just in general as a fan, like not in anything the team did. You just are hoping for a championship for your team is what I mean by disappointed. I don't mean disappointed with the outcome. I mean, the outcome is unfortunate, but I'm not disappointed with the Knicks being able to even get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And it was all a very close series. Like, even though it ended up being 4-2, and that doesn't sound close, it was all close. Like Mongo was saying, but disappointed in the sense that I want them to win.
And I'll say this: no person outside of New York will ever admit they were rooting for New York or any, and that's true of the Yankees, that's true of the Rangers, that's true of any New York sports team. But in a world where the Pacers and the Thunder get dangerously close to the Spider-Man meme with the similarities they have, this was the Knicks' chance, right? They were the different team of the four teams remaining. They were the crafty veterans. They were the get off my lawn, coached old man defense first team. Now we're just going to watch, two teams of a bunch of young kids running up and down the court, and the Thunder are going to wipe the Pacers off the face of the earth because they just happen to have more young guys. I mean, that's all it's going to come down. It's going to be a straight arms race. The Knicks were definitely sort of the unique team here. And from a league excitement standpoint, I don't even care that I'm a Knicks fan. I don't even care that, I live in this area. Knicks Thunder would have been the way more. I think I would have had the Thunder in 5 versus the Thunder in 4. It wasn't terribly fair either way, but it at least would have had some competition to it. This looks like it might be real ugly. I hope I'm wrong, but miserable finals coming up here.
And honestly, in general,
all market teams.
I mean, this is what the NBA wanted, right?
Think about it. If you don't,
I'm sorry. I was expecting you to retort, but you got food in your mouth. Well, wait.
He's gonna eat that whole plate.
God, I hope not. He'll have a heart attack on camera.
That's what the world wants. Take that, the algorithm.
Just an ASMR of Mongo eating crackers.
This is vintage TV here. No, But all right, fine. We accidentally. I have two things I really want to talk about, and so sorry out there, fans. The three Timberwolves fans listening, I'm sorry. We'll get to you in a minute. No, you know what? We'll get to you now. SGA is better than Anthony Edwards right now. Sorry. Good day. Now, but this was one of the things I wanted to get to. Mike Greenberg is the biggest name I've heard say this. I'll say it out loud so I can get the algorithm going. But other people have said this, that we are officially at the end of the super team era of the sport, which I want to talk about that, but more from a wording standpoint. I think that's more nitpicky. I disagree with him, but on a technicality. But he said that's good for the NBA. How is this good for the NBA? How is it good that we have 6 champions in 6 years going on 7 champions in 7 years? Because we have seen this before where we've had numerous champions in numerous years and, effectively accidental winners, right? One-offs. We saw it in the 4 or 5 years between Jordan and LeBron, and at least there were, Kobe and Duncan were able to win enough to keep that at least mildly respectable. But look at the late 70s. You have 3 or 4 different winners in a row. You get the Trailblazers winning a championship. You get the Dennis Johnson-led Sonics winning a championship. You get the Warriors winning a championship. I mean, Rick Barry's a legend, but, these are not the same guys where in the 80s it was basically 2 guys that dominated the entire sport, right? And you get that because you're between Wilt and Russell aging out and Magic and Bird coming into their own, right? This is just another gap in the NBA's history. And will Cooper Flagg be the next one? They're sure making it sound like he will be, but this is just going to be a blip. And the same way, I have 6th grade students who debate who's better, LeBron or Jordan. Like my grandparents could talk about Michael Jordan. We're not going to be sitting here when we're 70 and saying who was the better player, the one-time champion Jason Tatum or, the one-time champion, SGA or Halliburton. Now, if they win 3, 4, 5, okay, that's different. But, Antetokounmpo is just another guy with a ring right now, right? Like it actually would have been better for the NBA and the history of the NBA if Antetokounmpo could have rattled off 3, 4, 5 of these things. He's now in the same category as a bunch of really good players, but not great players, right? He's in the same category as Ben Wallace. He's in the same category as Dennis Johnson. He's in the same category as Jason Tatum, right? Not where you want Antetokounmpo to be when you look at what he's done statistically. This is not good. Maybe it's fun year to year, like watching March Madness. Who knows what's going to happen? But A, it makes the regular season even more meaningless, right? Because anyone can get in and dance now. And 2, looking back on this era, it's a lot. 10 years from now, I'm going to ask you, name the winners from 2020 to 2025 in order, and it's going to be an impossible question. I'm going to ask you to name the winners from 1992 to 1998, and anyone with a tiny bit of NBA knowledge can do that pretty easily. This is not good for the history and the health of the sport long term.
Yeah.
Not good for your health long term.
Or short term. And I mean, again, this is also just in general one of the problems with the NBA right now is that it's not necessarily the on-court play. Like that's part of it, right? Like people are tired of just like a million threes being shot a game. I don't know how they fix that, but it's also this lack of like, I know this is bandwagoning is like important, right? Like to a degree, because it helps generate like revenue for the sport, right? Like having like the rivalry between Golden State and Cleveland was great for the NBA, right? Like them getting to the finals, whatever, however many years in a row, battling it out. That's huge. Or with the Lakers and Celtics early, in their eras of the Bulls, just having a team like Mago was saying, just at least one. It's nice if you can get multiple teams battling it out. Does generate eyes, right? Like it even people who are mad, right? They want to watch because they want to watch LeBron lose, right? Like that's more, that's a bigger thing than no one cares. Not that no one cares, but right now no one cares. It's not as big a deal watching OKC win their first championship, right? Like there's definitely some fans, but it's not a huge fandom. And this is not like they had Kevin Durant, they had Russell Westbrook, they had James Harden, they had Serge Ibaka. That era was a very, very talented team too. But it's just hard to get the fandoms, and I don't know. You do want to have teams that are big fandoms in the finals or close to the finals. And even with this year with the Knicks, like that was the biggest team is the Knicks in either of the finals, right? And they're obviously big because it's New York, but like.
Now, I'll tell you, you use the word bandwagoning, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I will say, I do think the Thunder have a chance to make this 2 or 3 over a several-year span.
Yes, they definitely have.
Which does kind of help bring us
the apron, though, because the apron is going to hinder them when they have to start paying guys.
Correct, for sure. But even some of their 7th and 8th men could be starters on 20 teams in this league. I mean, there's depth all over the place, and they're going to keep bringing in rookies behind with all the picks they have. But, when you say bandwagoning, I compare what's going on in the NBA right now to March Madness. And I remember falling in love with George Mason, and I remember falling in love with, Loyola Chicago. And, I remember falling in love with the first time Butler did it and, all these teams through the years. But I didn't go out and buy a George Mason jersey. I didn't go out and get a Butler tattoo on my arm, right? Like there's not a level of dieharddom to just tuning in each year and going, who's the darling this year? Oh, look at how. I mean, it's fun. Don't get me wrong. I respect what Halliburton is doing on his run to the finals. I think it's very endearing. I enjoyed watching Devin Booker try and go toe-to-toe with Antetokounmpo a couple years ago. It's fun. It's an enjoyable Luka last year, noble in his efforts when it was basically 5 perennial all-stars versus Luka Doncic. I mean, it's fun to watch, but it's not something I'm going to invest in. It's not something, and it's also not something I'm going to believe in, right? Did any of us have the Mavericks going to the Western Finals this year by virtue of them making it last year? No, and I'm not taking the Pacers next year as the East. I'll tell you right now, I'm not picking Pacers Thunder next year. I mean, I get that it's a long shot this year, but they've done nothing to make me believe that their finals odds have gone up at all.
I mean, I will say a lot of people on this panel, the ones that are even not here, did have the OKC in the finals. That is, they looked great last year. It looked like this team had the ability to do it, and they seemed to be able to get over the hump this year. So kudos to them.
Yeah, and again, we have gone off the rails here because you guys gave me 4 pounds of meat and said run a show.
Is it really 4 pounds?
This was on my porch today that said "Go Reds, love Tommy." This is Tommy's fault.
I did not do that.
Well, then your personal account got hacked. But anyway,
sorry, that's from our old classmate Tommy Guns.
Oh, that would explain a lot more. But no, we started this part of the conversation saying we were talking about Pacers Knicks, and so I am focusing more on the Pacers here with my general attitude towards these finals. And now again, the Thunder, I think they're the more sustainable team. I do think they came of age earlier than I expected them to, but even still, they're not a team that necessarily I feel safe. I mean, the same way, Denver was the closest, right? I think I picked Nuggets Celtics 3-4 years in a row, and I wanted it. I know for a fact, you remember this, Corey, it was the first year we did it, and I wanted Ja Morant to be, especially after Zion had his injury problems, I tried my best to will Ja Morant into being the next face of the league. And Tommy, you might have been on the show by the time I said this. I said I would take a bet. This was about 2020. If you told me I could take the next 7 years, at some point I'll see a Grizzlies Celtics championship, I would take that bet in a heartbeat because Tatum and Ja looked like they were going to become the faces. And then Ja obviously had the issues with his personality. And, the Thunder kind of hit the reset button a few times and for some reason only draft 4s, which is very weird. But regardless, that they have their own issues. But I don't have that feeling necessarily with the Thunder. I mean, if there's not a whole lot of movement in the West, or there's movement the other way, right? If Aaron Gordon gets traded or something like that happens, or LeBron retires or something, I might be more inclined to pick the Thunder. But to me, after the Thunder sweep the Pacers here, they're right back just in the herd with the Rockets and with the Nuggets. And if Doncic and James can put it together for a year, they're right in that discussion. And again, very good for the week in and week out media writers who are doing power rankings. Very good for the casual fan. Very good for the sport in the moment. Not good for the long-term health of the NBA.
Yeah. All right, let's move to our finals predictions. Mongo, you have Thunder in 4. Tommy, Thunder in 4. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I just think this Thunder team is so much better than this Pacers team and so much deeper, right? Like this Thunder's team depth feels like the deepest team I can think of in recent memory. And Mongo is not wrong. You can go potentially down 7 players onto that, deep into that, not 7 deep on the bench, 7 the 5 starters, and then 2, 3, 4 people off the bench of potential starters, right? Like this is a very well built team. I thought this is where the Knicks were going to be going, and then they got a little pick happy in trading picks. Interestingly, I don't necessarily think it was a bad move, as other people are saying. We'll talk about that when we get to that segment. But how it is turning for the Thunder is how I was hoping it would be for the Knicks, and it still could be for the Knicks. I'm not saying it's not, but like the Thunder still have a lot of draft capital, so like Mama was saying, where they're able to still fill in those spots for even when they do lose those players to the apron eventually. You know, this team might not be SGA, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams moving forward every year, you know, for the next decade, but they easily could be a core of some of those players, and then who have the next man up. And they seem to be very good at doing that. So we'll see. It's promising with this Thunder team, and I'm hopeful that they can continue.
Which I want to talk about that in a second, but I feel like we're going to get off the finals here very quickly because of how boring they are. Kevin has Thunder in 6, by the way. He texted us during this. I want to quickly talk about the Pacers, just give a little take on them, but then we'll come back to the Thunder because I do have a question for both of you based on what Kilroy just said and based on what I said before about Mike Greenberg's take on what's going on in the NBA right now. But again, I said it before. I just want to elaborate on it. I'd rather be the Knicks than the Pacers right now. Halliburton is going to get exposed in these finals. I really do believe that. So he's going to be – him and Anthony Edwards are going to be the also-ran darlings, right? They're going to be the young up-and-comers who they can't put it together in the championship, right? They're going to have that problem. But here's the bigger problem. Benny Mathurin, Tommy, I don't know if you got to watch any of Game 6. Benny Mathurin looks like he was instructed on what Pacer basketball is and then said, got it, coach, I'm going to do the exact opposite. He does not – he's a great source of microwave offense, and because they're winning, they're looking past it. But he does not belong in Indiana at all. They're going to have to figure out what to do with him, and that's going to be a problem for that team because of how big he is in the offense. They also have a problem in that Jarris Walker is we're literally Spider-Man meme within a Spider-Man meme. Jarris Walker is Obi Toppining because of Obi Toppin. Jarris Walker taken in the lottery a few years back and is stuck on the bench behind a veteran, in this case Miles Turner, but also Obi Toppin. Sound familiar when Obi Toppin was doing his job, playing his limited minutes, but wanted out from behind Julius Randle. Jarris Walker's rookie contract expires 1 year before Obi Toppin's ridiculous contract does. And guess what? Somebody's going to give Jarris Walker the Obi Toppin contract. So in 3-4 years, the Pacers are going to have to be making a tough decision about a 31-year-old, 32-year-old Obi Toppin, while Jarris Walker's putting up 10 and 5 off the bench for the Celtics while the Celtics are beating the Pacers in the playoffs, right? They have problems on this team that the Knicks don't necessarily have. The Knicks, on the other hand, are watching some depth on the bench they didn't know they have start to blossom with each passing game in the playoffs. And we'll talk more about what the Knicks do in a minute. But the young guys on the Pacers, they got some tough decisions coming up, and I don't think it ends well for the Pacers' depth. But back to what you were saying about the Thunder, Kilroy, and it goes back to the Mike Greenberg comment about the super team era being over. How is the Thunder not a super team? I mean, I get that they didn't go out and buy stars, but 2 of their 3 big 3 were acquired through the trades for Paul George. These are picks that were ascertained in a move involving a superstar. It still involved the movement of a superstar. Sam Presti, and give Sam Presti all the flowers on earth, he was smart enough to know that the new capital where the money was going in the NBA was going to be picks, not money. And I respect him to no end for recognizing that. But at the end of the day, it's still the same thing. Sam Presti used a bizarre amount of capital to get the stars that he wanted. He just drafted them because at the end of the day, only one of these three superstars was drafted with an actual Oklahoma City Thunder pick, and that's Holmgren. But guess what? The 2010s Miami team had one homegrown guy on it, right? Anytime Cleveland won, they had LeBron. The Warriors actually had two homegrown guys, right? They're more impressive than this. The only guy who wasn't a Warrior pick, like owned by the Warriors originally, was Draymond Green. And that was a pick that involved Dan Gadzuric. That was an accident. That wasn't like they went out and bought that pick. It was just a fortunate accident. So I actually think the Thunder are more like a super team than they are like the Warriors who organically drafted, because this isn't organic drafting. This is strategic use of picks. I mean, they got 54 games, 3 starts out of a guy named Dylan Jones. Any guess how they got Dylan Jones? They sent 5 second-rounders to the Knicks for him in last year's draft. They can literally just buy depth and buy health however they want to. And so this is a super team. It's a super team that the weapon of choice was draft capital, not financial capital. But I'm sorry, this is still a super team. I'm not going to let them get off the hook. I mean, it's impressive, but super teams are, right? And if this had failed, they deserve just as much, insult as like the Nets super team failing. This is not something new. It's just a new way of getting to the same means.
I mean, I definitely think this is a super team in the process. I don't want to. The only reason I'm not saying they're a super team yet is they haven't done it. They haven't won it, right? You have, like, now they have. They're in the finals, and now they need to do it, at least get back to the Western Conference Finals next year.
Right, but remember, we measure super teams just based off the effort to form them. Durant and his boys in Brooklyn were considered a failed super team, but they were considered a super team. Garnett, Pierce, and well,
that's because they
were a super team at that point in Brooklyn.
It was from like already. What's the word's not coming to me. They had the stardom already, right? Like SGA is becoming a star, right? Like a superstar. Sorry, not just a regular star. Is becoming a superstar, right? Like outside of SGA, I mean, they have a lot of very good players who work very well on that team, but this feels like more of like right now. And again, that doesn't mean it can't get there. This feels more like the Detroit Pistons.
But what I'm saying is to me, the definition of a super team up until this point has been the use of, now we have defined it because it's our world. We can do what we want. We've defined it as the use of money to get whoever you want on your team. But if you simply just simplify the word money to asset, the use of your strongest asset to get whoever you want on your team, that is what the Thunder have done here.
I always looked at it more like how we look at the big three and stuff like that. That's how I've always looked at it, right? Like you have big stars on your team. That's personally how I've always looked at it and how I felt about it. Right, even with the Spurs, you had Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and Tim Duncan. Right, you had LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, LeBron James, Kevin Love, and Kyrie Irving. You have Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry. You have blah 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 blah.
Correct.
That's how I look at it. I understand what you're saying, but that to me, that is what makes a super.
That's not a super team the way we're defining it in the eyes of the media.
That's how you're defining it, not how I'm defining it.
And that's why I asked the question, so I get to set the rules of this question, which I know is rare. You're normally the moderator on this show, but I'm saying the media currently is defined, because I'm not saying dynasties, because the way that the media today defines a super team, what you just said about Ginobili, Parker, and Duncan is the furthest thing from a super team. I'm talking about the idea that starting about 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, teams were getting intentionally bought together. Notice I didn't say brought together, bought together. They were using top dollar trades when they needed to in order to put together. Now, again, we've traditionally seen it as, like you said, existing superstars together. But these guys were the top players they could get with those draft picks. They basically set their own market for the draft by virtue of having so many picks. And again, I'm not taking anything away from Sam Presti. I think it's genius. I think he's ahead of his time in that sense. But I think I don't think that the idea of buying a team has necessarily changed. I think he's just changed.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is, well, I don't know if I'm wording it correctly, is that because there's a lack of precedent beforehand from these players, other than a little bit last year with the Thunder, where they were had a good record, but their playoffs was a failure. That's what it is as well. It's a combination of things, right? It can be how you acquire them through assets, but it also has to be a team of players that are a successful or have had past successes. Like what made the couple failed super teams that you had for the Nets originally with the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Jason Terry super team. That failure was because those players all were successful players, right? Like they were looked at as successful players, and then they came and they failed. If it was, and then you look at what I'm saying is what makes them a super team is past success and
right. But
the ability to act.
Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Garnett were a super team as soon as they got assembled in Boston. Yes.
Because they had past success.
They had 0 combined rings, and Paul Pierce's stunk for a decade.
They had success individually as individual success.
Paul Pierce's Celtics had stunk for a decade.
But all right, Paul Pierce might be, but Kevin Garnett was an MVP at that point, correct? He was multiple time. There was multiple times. There's other things, right? Like I don't just mean success in the sense of team success. I think that Paul Pierce is overrated, but that's besides the point. I don't know. I understand what you're saying. I just don't agree with it. I still think that past success is important, and I think that this team has the building blocks to become that, but they just aren't there. I think this is the first step. Last year was the first step with them being a successful regular season team. This year, I think, gets them that next step. And I guess at this point, you can say because they have they did back-to-back years of success and they grew on it this year. So yes, in that sense, yeah. But it's not what traditionally people think of when they think of super teams. It's not just based off of being able to acquire them with money. It's you have to be acquiring players who are successful, whether it be statistically by being considered one of the top players at their positions, right? Like Paul Pierce was always considered one of the top shooting guards / small forwards in the league during his time. He was never considered the top echelon, but he was definitely top third in the league, right? Top 10 most of his career, where Isaiah Hartenstein was not considered a potential. He until the Knicks revived him, he wasn't looked at as a potential starting caliber center anymore. Chet Holmgren was looked at as he has a high ceiling, but can he be able to stay healthy on the court? He has a very small, brittle frame, and his rookie year was just didn't happen initially because he got hurt. And then I think his sophomore year, he also has suffered injuries as well. I don't fully remember, but SGA, there was questions of whether or not he is going to be that next guy. And obviously those questions are erased now in the past 2 years. Last year, he was in the conversation for MVP, and this year he obviously won the MVP. But there was those questions are still there for a lot of those players, where when you're creating a super team, the questions about those players' talents were not there. Their level of talent was known already. It's just they didn't necessarily have success as a team.
All right, let me try this one more time for you there, Captain Semantics. Let's talk about a big three. How is this not the building of a big three? Do you consider the Thunder exactly what the Warriors did? Do you see the Warrior blueprint and the Thunder blueprint as identical?
Yes.
I do not. And so we will have a fundamental disagreement here, but
okay.
Because the difference is the Warriors used picks that were their own and drafted very well. The Thunder used 1,000 picks to get to the spots they wanted in the drafts they wanted. And it wasn't like they just recycled picks. They got hold of a superstar and then use that superstar. I think that is an important difference. I think, and I'm not taking anything away from Sam Presti, but I am taking a little away from the Thunder narrative. This idea that they just went out and anything they touched turned to gold. Well, that's because they had a lot of margin of error because they originally went out and had Paul George to kickstart that. Paul George was effectively a Kickstarter.
Well, I mean, it was Paul George was along with Russell Westbrook, right? Like Westbrook was on the team, and like that was like the remnants of the James Harden not James Harden of the Kevin Durant era. Like they had like it comes from somewhere.
I mean, the Paul George trade lands you SGA and the Jalen Williams pick. That's got to be the most responsible thing at play here. 2 of their big 3 come from the same trade of a superstar.
But what I'm saying, okay. I'm not, we're done with this. I'm not done. We're not, Tommy can say his stuff. It's a losing battle for me. I'm out. Not of the show, of this conversation.
I don't think this hits the same way some of the other completely drafted like finding Ginobili in the second round. Tommy, I know you're a Spurs fan, so I'll kowtow to you here, is, more impressive than letting somebody else take the flyer on SGA in the lottery, seeing his potential, and then using a superstar to go and get him. Now, could he still have not panned out? Absolutely. But that's different than finding the Greek freak with the 14th overall pick. That's different.
But they are still their pick. Yes, it wasn't originally their pick. But then are you saying Kobe is not a homegrown Laker, even though he played his entire career with the Lakers?
Oh, I also think that deserves an asterisk next to it because the Lakers went out and rigged that draft. Absolutely, they did. That's a totally different story. The Lakers literally went out and told the league, Kobe, A, is not ready for the NBA, don't draft him, and B, he's going to Europe if he doesn't like your team. There is no way that can be the definition of organic lottery success. I'll drop the big 3 if you promise to agree that was a terrible example.
I mean, it was the only one that came to my mind. That's the issue. I know there's tons of others. I just couldn't think of them.
Listen, Tommy, you take over. I got a lot of cheese to eat.
Putting me on the spot here after like half an hour of silence.
I'm mad as
We've only been recording for 37 minutes.
And my sodium is I don't know what to do.
30 minutes silence for me. Watching you guys go at it over this.
This is just a regular hanging out at a party that me and Mongo used to do.
This is why we started the show in the first place. We would be doing this in a buddy's basement if we weren't doing it on YouTube.
Oh, well, you actually have no input, Tommy. Oh, okay.
Hey, what should the Knicks do, Kilroy?
If I could
No, let's start with the Wolves. We'll end with the Knicks. The Knicks are our team. They're Tommy's
second.
They're not your second.
Who's my second team then? And don't say the Kings. That was 1 year.
I made a bad choice. You were so on that Kings team, man.
I was.
Los Monarchs?
In fairness, that same year I was in on the Pistons when they finished with like 22 wins. So,
Los Monarchs.
Los pissed offs.
Los Monarchs, right? That's your other team, the Los Monarchs.
Yeah, Los Monarchs.
It's a disenfranchised WNBA team, right?
Yeah.
Or wasn't Sacramento?
Are they? I have no idea.
Now my second team is the disenfranchised Montreal Expos.
Everyone's favorite. Rest in peace, Montreal. Not the Expos, not the city. The city's still fine, to my understanding. What can the Minnesota Timberwolves do? So they're in a bit of a weird predicament here, right? They went out in this past offseason and traded Karl Anthony Towns to the New York Knicks in exchange for Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. And I don't think there's any pick swaps or anything. I don't fully remember the details of the trade. But where do they go from here now? Julius Randle's a free agent. Naz Reid is a free agent. They have a couple other players who are up for free agency. This is their second year. This is 2 years in a row that they went to the Western Conference Finals and got beat. I think did they get swept the year before? I don't quite remember. maybe it was gentleman's sweep. It was not.
It was bad. You're right. It was definitely
Yeah.
bad. I don't remember what it was, but it was not pretty.
So, it doesn't look good. They don't really have space to go anywhere. They're going to hit if they re-sign Julius Randle, they're going to hit the second apron. And this team doesn't seem, they seem like they're still, missing something, right? Like, Rudy Gobert's obviously, one of the best defensive players in the league, but he's a liability on offense, and he does seem to struggle against smaller bigs, who are more off the basket, whatever. Whatever the term. Why am I not thinking of the term? Like the obviously like the stretch fives he struggles against, right? What's the not face to the basket? What's it?
Back to the basket.
Back. Yeah.
Face to the audience. Feet to the ground.
Anyway, you get my point. What do? They're in a weird spot. They have new ownership. Alex Rodriguez, part owner. That new ownership takes over this upcoming. I think they're officially over now, but they're going to be. This is their first off season, right? What do they do? And they don't really have draft capital either, right? They used a lot of that to acquire Rudy Gobert. I don't know what they do. I don't. They have obviously one of the top young players in Anthony Edwards on their team. Rudy Gobert, I believe, is on the wrong side of 30 or getting close to it. Mike Conley is not getting any younger if he's not already.
Mike Conley's still playing. I mean, that's one of the few 2007 rookies left on Earth.
Yeah, and then you look at their he meant in the NBA. I really hope. I'm not going to look into it. I really hope he made it in the NBA.
No, they're all doing well as far as I know. I didn't. Was Joakim Noah in the stands? I didn't see Noah. I really thought we would see Joakim Noah during the Knicks. How they have everyone. Chris Dudley was at one of the Knicks games. Good on him for showing up. But I really thought we'd see Noah at one of the Knicks games. I didn't see him. I might have just missed him.
Is he a? I don't know. I know he was definitely not. I don't think he was. It wasn't talked about. What's his relationship with the Knicks? Is it good?
I don't know. To me, there's Spike Lee, all other humans, Charles Oakley. It's really a 3-tiered, system.
Yeah, but he might be in the Charles Oakley, spot.
Nobody's in the Charles Oakley spot. There's a special place in Knicks jail for Charles, literally in Knicks jail for Charles Oakley. Anyway, Tommy, you can answer this question first because I have to eat this cracker sandwich.
Oh well, no. Let me finish my tirade first, then Tommy can. But so they don't really have like, and who outside of Anthony Edwards, who's a young star, a young up and coming player on that team that you look at and you're like, yeah, I mean Naz Reid is not young at this point, but he's definitely not old. He's in his mid-20s, and maybe he can be the starting, a starting big for them again. He used to be, I believe, before they got Rudy Gobert. And to my understanding, he wants to stay. From what I've heard, he wants to stay, and they want to keep him. But are you going to pay him to be coming off the bench, or are you going to move him in? And what would you do, Tommy, and then Mongo, if you were the GM for the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Well, this might sound obvious, but you look at what worked in this playoffs for sure, and that was Anthony Edwards. Who can you put around Anthony Edwards that can promote success, better than Naz Reid, better than Julius Randle, better than, I think you just have to look and see what young talent is on other teams that might want to leave the team they're on. And the name that came to mind that I think might be, I don't know if it's a great fit, but it's at least a big that could make some noise in Minnesota is Lauri Markkanen. I think because you always hear about Lauri Markkanen getting moved from Utah. I know Utah is a hard team to work with because they want the whole world when you trade them something. But
what assets do you have to trade for him?
That's where I'm at a loss because I'm not I don't know the
So like that's my big conundrum, right? With this Wolves team is what assets do they have to if they don't keep Julius Randle, if they don't keep Naz Reid, what assets do they have? Do they have cap space? Kevin is our cap expert, and unfortunately he's just landing.
I suspect Julius Randle is gonna go into free agency. I don't know if he returns to this Timberwolves team. The person to look at though is Naz Reid. Do they keep Naz Reid, or does Naz Reid go somewhere else?
Go on.
So I don't have Kevin reflexes, but what I was just looking on my phone there, I don't know how or why they have this, but they have the 17th overall pick that belonged to Detroit once upon a time. So they do have a first rounder this year, right in that range. That this was where I was worried, Tommy, where you were going was I thought this was going to be our annual ploy to move Zion Williamson is what I thought was about to happen.
No. He's out of the league.
I don't think. Yeah, he's got too much controversy, I think.
But regardless, we were talking about moving picks like the 19 for guys like that. So Markkanen, again, the Jazz are really tough, but you do have the 17. You also have you could get a little creative with making a trade here because you have, I have no idea why they have this, but they have the 31, which is always a fairly unique pick because teams, it's the first player drafted who's not guaranteed a contract, which some teams like. And you can even get something like the Celtics offering a future first for that 31. And even though it's not going to be a terribly good first, it's now another first you can put in a package, something of that nature. You also can probably do some dealing with the Thunder, who we've seen do nonsense like 4 second rounders for 2 second rounders just to get where they want to go, which is what I was talking about before, right? They can control any draft they want on sheer quantitative, taking a quantitative hit. So if I'm Minnesota, I'm, it sounds weird, call your immediate rival, but I'm calling the Thunder, seeing what the Thunder want to do with their, gaps of picks. I'm probably moving the 17 because I personally don't like the depth in this draft to enough where I think the 17 is a player. You do have Dillingham off the bench. He's still a young enough piece that he's probably movable. I'm with you, Tommy. I think Naz Reid is the guy I'm signing, and I'm trying to, sign him to be my starting 4. But you're definitely using the 17, trying to get cute with that 31 and Dillingham to try and bring in a 2 or a 3 there, or I guess a 1 or a 3, because Anthony Edwards can do either. Before you're worried too much about trying to draft one at 17, I think that's a dangerous game. If you see a rookie, from just outside the lottery starting 50 games next year for them, that could be bad news.
And I
unless Cooper falls to them. Cooper could fall.
Yeah, for the first 16 teams pass on Cooper Flag a la the movie Draft Day, and then all bets are off. But
I think this kind of speaks to, though, how important amassing picks has become in the past few seasons. The teams that have all the picks are finding more success. The Thunder are obviously, in the finals. The Spurs have been pretty successful with, draft picks in the past couple of years. Not just using them, but dealing them out as well. And, the draft picks have seemed like they've become very, very core to how these execs are working now. It's very rare now you see a trade that doesn't involve at least 1 or 2 picks.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Let's get to the nightcap. The Knicks' future. So there's a lot out there saying that the Knicks need to obliterate this team, just tear it down and start over, which makes no sense. Not really tear it down, but they're if you at all are part of Knicks X at all, it's just either it was early in the series, it was they need to fire Tom. Then it became and earlier than that, early in the season, it was that Mikal Bridges trade was terrible. They gave all the draft capital for a guy who's not worth that. We're talking about mid to late, first round pick. We're not talking about like top tier draft picks that they're losing here for him. And they thought at the time they did not have Karl Anthony Towns, right? Like that was their big acquisition was to get Bridges, and they lucked into, in a way, getting Karl Anthony Towns. I think, and now it's Karl Anthony Towns, and you're hearing all this stuff of coaches and players apparently were questioning Karl Anthony Towns on defense. It's like, yeah, that's just who he's always been in the NBA, right? Like he's not known as a defensive stalwart, right? Like he's known for his offensive prowess and being one of the best offensively gifted big men the NBA has seen in a very, in not gifted like Shaq type, but like he's offensively, he can, do so much that it's but I think that all that is overreaction. I think that they have to, at this point, they've already pretty much said Tibbs is staying, all but said that, which is, I think it is the correct move at this point, right? Like you got to the finals of the Eastern Conference Finals. There's no reason to move on. You stuck with him at this far. You got to give him at least one more year. If they do bad again, like as either record wise or the team just fails in the playoffs and has like a first round exit in 5, then maybe next year you reevaluate, your coaching situation. But I think at this point you have to keep Tom Thibodeau and going into this upcoming season, unless he chooses himself to retire or move up in a different position. That's different. Assuming he wants to stay as a head coach, you keep him and you move forward with him. On to the Bridges thing. I still think that they did not know that it was, they did not, if they had any inkling that they were getting Towns, I don't think they would have done the Bridges trade. Or at least I don't think they would have done that version of the Bridges trade. I think that they probably would have tried to keep a little bit more capital because they, but they also didn't, I don't know. I don't think that they knew that was going to happen. I don't think that the Bridges trade is bad, as everyone thinks it is. This was his first year, and give him some time. Same with Cat. Give him some time. Let them learn together. The Heat didn't win a championship in their first time together, right? It rarely happens when a super team's put together that they win it in it right away. I don't think this Knicks team's a super team, but big three is right.
Let's not get on that again.
But
I'm just saying, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to define. I think we need to have a further inspection on.
They have two. The Knicks at least have two guys who are in conversation for MVP, right? Like Cat was in conversation at points this season for the MVP, and Jalen Brunson last year and at points in the season was in conversation for MVP. And which is, by the way, what I find bonkers that fans are like throwing Cat to the wolves.
That was unfortunate. I respect you catching it, but that's unfortunate.
Because of a subpar defense in the Eastern Conference Finals. He's not known for it, right? Like it'd be one thing if he was like known as a defensive player and then he just crapped himself, but he didn't. He's not known for that. His offense was still there for the most part. You got what we got what I wanted from him. I don't think you move on from him. If the Knicks do go to get Giannis, maybe you have to get rid of him to get him. But I'd rather get rid of Bridges to get Giannis. I think Giannis and Cat would be a nice combo together. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I would like to see that. I don't necessarily, I don't want to blow up. I don't want to really lose either, to be honest, right now. I think that this team is going somewhere right now. I think that they still have a bright future. This team is still relatively young enough that you don't, that they shouldn't be panicking. They just need to flesh out that bench. That Mongo was right. They saw a couple of guys this past series who have promise, and look into that. They do need to find better depth at their bigs, or at least confidently play their depth at their bigs. Mitchell Robinson hopefully can stay healthy next year. That's great that he was able to stay healthy once he came back, he was able to stay healthy, which was great. He is so crucial for the Knicks defense, and that this team, that if they are going to trade him, it has to be to get Giannis, right? Like you're not trading Mitchell Robinson and not getting Giannis. In my, if I'm if I'm the GM of the Knicks, which I'm not. Tommy, let's start with you. Mongo, you can wrap things up.
I don't think I don't think you have to do anything with this team. I think this team can succeed even if they don't get Giannis. But the big thing is for me, and I know you said that the Knicks should stick with Thibodeau Tom Thibodeau for now. But look at how he could. It took him 3 games to adapt to this series against the Pacers. I almost wonder if maybe it might be time to find a coach that is a little more adaptable to how the changing game. It's it seems like Thibodeau is pretty staunch in his approach, but to a point where it sometimes blows up in his face.
It can be detrimental.
And I haven't watched enough Knicks basketball throughout the year to speak to that entirely, but from what I saw, at least.
I mean, that is who he is, but you kind of know that signing up for it, right? Bringing him in, that's what you're getting. And if you're okay with that, then you don't just abandon it right now. I think especially seeing they finally saw success in the playoffs, right? Yes, they lost to the Pacers, but like we were talking about, the Knicks had the chance to win the series.
Oh yeah.
It was not like they were. It's not like they played poorly and got destroyed by the Pacers. Every single game, for the most part, maybe one of them that wasn't, was their game, a game that they could easily won.
And that's the thing. They got to I think going into next year, they need to take this and learn better how to execute a finish, and stay in the lead.
Hopefully they will.
I know all about this. I've watched my Spurs for the past 5 years blow leads in the fourth, and there it is. Like, they lose by 20 after being up by 20. So I know exactly what this is.
Fair enough. Mauro, you want to bring us home?
Yeah, I'll be quick here because now that I'm out of apple juice, this is getting painful to eat. So we'll be quick about this. Sorry, the reason I went to the phone there, and again, I try to always explain when I lose focus here. I always feel unfair to the audience. Now, I'm not saying the GMs are sitting out there reading, Sports Illustrated and Yahoo Sports and all that stuff, but a narrative can get created. They had I can't find the article. They had a list of possible trades the Knicks could do, and the last one was Bridges and it brought back something like Daniel Gafford and somebody similar from Dallas. But the media's view right now, which can easily become the narrative, is Bridges is not worth. If you want to get a star, you're moving Cat. So that idea of Cat and Giannis together, nice. I'm with you. Would love to see it. But I don't think you're moving Bridges for anything beyond just getting deeper. And that's kind of the point. You can nitpick about Cat all you want, but at the end of the day, the real problem is just the depth of this team, and they're slowly figuring it out. And so moving Cat out to bring a different star in doesn't move that needle. They might be a different star. They might be a better star, but you're not changing the actual problem at heart. Now, I loved what I saw from DeLon Wright in these playoffs. He offers something that the rest of the bench doesn't. He can control the tempo of the game, and you have to convince him to be the fifth guard. By Kilroy, you'd have to convince him to be the fifth guard because Shamet kind of plays a 2-3-ish, but in reality, Shamet, Wright, and McBride are all guards off the bench. So Wright would have to know he's there, kind of like a veteran lefty in a bullpen, right? He's there specifically for game tempo reasons. But I would definitely keep those guys together. And then I'm actually I'm probably moving on from I'm letting Huck Porty go. They have the team option, but I'm letting him go. I'm letting Achua go. And we somehow own the rights to PJ Tucker. I'm letting him go. I'm freeing up my 3 spots that way. I'm actually interested in I'm looking at Trey Lyles from the Kings. I think he can basically do what Obi Toppin does for the Pacers. I think, if you have DeLon Wright who can slow down the game in the backcourt, Trey Lyles can slow down the game in the front court and give you some minutes there. On the flip side, I'm looking for a little instant offense with my last big, and I'm interested in Bol Bol, to be quite honest. He's a free agent this offseason. And then we do have the 50th pick, so I'm probably taking the flyer on that 50th pick. We also accidentally ended up with a guy you loved once upon a time, Kira. I don't know if you remember this name, Marshawn Beauchamp. He was the first-round pick of the about 4 or 5 years ago.
When did we get him?
He ended up coming over in the Jericho Sims trade along with DeLon Wright somehow, I believe. But so I'm looking at Beauchamp and the 50th overall pick, kind of competing for that last spot. I know Jeff's a big fan of Tyler Kolek, but at this point, I'm thinking I'm using him like Jericho Sims. I'm trying to use him to either navigate around the draft a little bit. I'm trying to use him for a draft, for an exemption. I don't know if he necessarily fits in this team. So, I mean, he's the only one who I look at, the younger guys and say, because the other younger, right, Hakporti can just be moved this year. Achua can just be moved. But I'm maybe looking at him. But again, I'm not really touching the top 8 or 9 of this team because you're not going to do much to make it deeper. And in the meantime, it's not like they're not aware of their faults. They were one of the worst starting 5 since January. They had a plus-minus of -9. They know who they are. They know what they're capable of. And again, in a league that just has parity out of its mind right now, a team running it back for a second year in a row is a huge advantage. It is.
Do you? And I have my thoughts on this. Do they look to move Hart?
If you sit, so here's the thing: you sit, like I said, you sit down. How I said, you sit down DeLon Wright and say you are going to be the most important 11th man in basketball, and he needs to be okay with that. You need to sit Josh Hart down and say, other than the kicking of grown men in said testicles, we need you to watch Draymond Green footage this year, and we need you to be that. Josh Hart stays around and becomes super important to this team if Josh Hart is doing like 4.9 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steal, 5 foul games. You need Josh Hart to be your Draymond Green on this team. And if he can embrace that, I'm keeping him. I think he fills that. I think that's a very important role on this team where Cat can get bullied at times. I mean, Anunoby was basically playing fullback in Game 6, but he needs help, and Hart can really add that layer of toughness, that this team needs. And so I'm telling him, start molding your, sort of the back 9 of your career in the ilk of Draymond Green.
I honestly forgot Precious Achua was on that team.
Listen, it's a deep cut. I get the fact that 3 minutes ago, any non-Knick fan turned this off. I get that. Sorry. Knick fans in the meantime are like, yes, Trey Lyles, love it. But the average Knick fan is like, okay. And honestly, I'm okay with the TLDR, version of what I just said being, just don't do anything. Just go golf. Go hang out in Cabo for 8 weeks. We'll see you for August. Like, last year was so adventurous for this team. It was fun. It was necessary. They needed to shake things up. This year, they don't. Just stay off the back page. Let the Nets do something stupid with their 4 picks and own the back page from June 26th to July 15th and just stay out of the way. Mets and Yankees are cooking this summer. Everyone's interested to see how quickly the Giants and Jets can lose 4 games in September. Just let everyone else own the next 3 months. We'll come back and already be, we won't necessarily be Boston and Cleveland, but we'll be predicted to finish somewhere between 3 and 5 in the East without touching anything. So why would you shake that up?
I mean, I would only do it if it was for like depth. And like, I wouldn't shake up necessarily any of my major players for that. I would, if a good starter and depth were to come available for Hart or for Bridges, I would potentially look at it, but I wouldn't seek it. If a good deal comes to me, I would think about it. I would not necessarily be the one seeking a deal.
I will also add, if you do truly see these playoffs and go, oh man, DeLon Wright and Shamet can be part of the long-term solution on this bench. Those 2 guys, McBride, I pick Trey Lyles, but pick your favorite free agent 4, and Mitchell Robinson. I mean, it's not sexy, but it's about as blue collar, lunch pail and professional of a bench as you're going to get. I mean, there is some depth there. Part of the problem is we didn't realize what this bench was capable of necessarily until, basically the second quarter of Game 6 when they managed to stave off elimination for an extra 12 minutes. But there is talent there. And again, if there's a chance also that either Huck Porty or Kolek develops in the summer and they can get in the rotation, you do have the 50th pick, which again, the one thing you can say about the Knicks, whether it's guys like Jericho Sims, they've found useful bench pieces in the second round. That 50th could be something useful. There are internal options here that do not require you. Forget the super team big three conversation for a minute. I think sort of the other way to say that might have made a little more sense or been at least a little less divisive is it time to consider that we have to redefine super team to be not the team buying the most superstars, but the team to be collecting the most picks? Is that the new Cold War asset of choice in today's NBA? And if it is, it makes having superstars even more of a delicacy. And so you said it, and I agree with you. The Knicks have two of them. I mean, they've been in MVP conversations before. Why would you move off one of those to acquire depth when the Thunder are doing things like giving up 5 second-rounders for Dylan Jones when the Knicks know how to use second-rounders? Go trade Tyler Kolek for another 5 second-rounders, and now you have 10 chances at finding your backup 4 in the next 8 drafts. Like, you don't need to give up a superstar to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks are very good at drafting in the second round. Even Mitchell Robinson was a second-round pick. I mean, I don't hate it. I don't hate what you're saying. Thunder, give us a call.
Please keep sending them. I mean, you guys have too many. We seem to be, we seem to know how to acquire second-rounders pretty well. So, and we don't know what to do with a pick between 1 and 12. We actually got some of our picks by trading Ousmane Dang to the Thunder in the first place. So please, Thunder, keep it going. We'll keep sending you players. We've apparently sent you 2 guys in the last 2 or 3 years that have got us about 8 picks. So keep them coming.
Thank you all so much for watching. Remember, like, share, subscribe, comment down below. What would you do if you were the GM of the Minnesota Timberwolves or of the New York Knicks? And give us your finals predictions. OKC Thunder or Indiana Pacers, and in how many games? Thank you all so much for watching. We'll catch you guys next time.
Love you guys.